Welcome back to Catholic Reboot. What I wanted to cover is kind of putting my money where my mouth is, where I was referring to um, understanding what each day in the Catholic calendar represents, right? So it's a good time to start because today, and I don't like dating my podcast because some people may say, oh, that's dated and why listen to it. But I think this is an exception. So today is the 21st of March. And what do we know about the 21st of March? Two things. One, it's Passion Sunday, which is beautiful. I mean, what a great way to say, okay, let's start right now all the way through Easter because there's so many great things that are happening during this period. So up until this point, we're basically going through those weeks of Lent preparing, right? Well, not only is today Passion Sunday, right? Not to be confused with Palm Sunday, right? It's Passion Sunday, the week before Palm Sunday, and the week before the Passion Week. That's why it gets a little confusing. But it's also the feast day of Saint Benedict, which is phenomenal. Okay, so Gen Xers and Millennials, let's do this. First of all, who was Saint Benedict? Now, he was considered the father of Western monasticism, and he lived from 480 to 543, right? Now, don't get turned off and think, oh, another old-timer, right? Because what he did was pretty remarkable, right? Actually, when you learn his life, you probably won't take some of the ups and downs in your life too near and dear, so to speak. All right, so Saint Benedict was what they say blessed by the grace to be able to foretell what was to come, right? So he was originally of a noble Italian family in an area called Umbria, and I'll put that name along the bottom. And in the year 480, as I said, is when he was born. But as a boy, he showed great inclination for virtue, right? And a maturity in his actions. And he was sent to Rome at the age of 7 to be placed in their public schools. And at the age of 14, he was so taken back or alarmed by the licentiousness, I can never pronounce that, put the word up there, of the Roman youth at that time, that he actually ran away to the desert mountains of Subiaco, right, which was about 40 miles from Rome, and was directed by the Holy Spirit into a deep, it was almost an inaccessible cave. So it's now since known as the Holy Grotto. So he lived there for 3 years, unknown to anyone other than a monk named Romanos, who basically clothed him with a monastic habit and would bring him food, right? Now, he was eventually discovered when, on one Easter day, God advised a priest who lived about 4 miles from there to take food to him because he was starving. And you talk about placing your trust in God. He was literally starving. So the priest searched in the hills and finally found where Benedict was, and he brought him a meal. And they basically ate together. Now, some of the shepherds all knew of where he was, and soon there's some sort of fame that grew around the hermit sanctity, and it began to spread, right? Now, much like Padre Pio, which is more from our time, the devil persecuted him, but really to no avail. When a temptation of the flesh came about him, he rolled in a clump of thorns and needles and came out of it covered in blood, but remained in the spirit. Now you may say, oh, that's a little aggressive. Well, that's how important his purity was, because he knew he had to stay in the state of grace, Now, eventually, disciples came to him, and under his direction, numerous monasteries were founded, right? So, many of you may not know this about the Benedictine rule, but it's a very rigorous rule. And they actually drew up the rule, uh, and that actually created some hatred among the monks and others that were kind of mixed in. And we never get away from the human nature. There's always going to be those that when they see a piousness or a spiritualness will try to bring about this poison, so to speak. So when the saint made the sign of the cross in front of his food, because he was trying to be poisoned by certain others, the food would fall to pieces to the ground. I always thought that was a great story, right? So one of the most tremendous stories about Saint Benedict was the resurrection of a boy. And apparently the boy's father came to him saying, "Give me back my son." And he had such great faith in Saint Benedict, and finally Benedict was moved from with compassion, and he prostrated himself upon the body of the child and prayed, "Behold not, O Lord, my sins, but the faith of this man, and restore the soul which thou hast taken away." And the child rose up and walked to his father. So when a monk later on, when the monk lost an iron head of an axe in the river, the abbot told him to throw the handle in after it, and it rose from the riverbed to resume its former place. So these kind of miracles from Saint Benedict were greatly known at the time. Now, if you stop and think about it and say, well, what does this have to do with me? He knew at a very young age that to participate in the culture and just go along to get along wasn't the answer. He chose virtue and piety, and then allowed the Holy Spirit and Christ to create the life that he was supposed to live, right? That is a lot of faith. That's why we need to study our saints, because we need to learn from them so that we can say, boy, if someone like St. Benedict can go through all that, I could at least try a little bit, right? So now 6 days before his death, St. Benedict ordered his grave to be prepared, then fell ill of a fever, right? And the 6th day he asked to be carried to the chapel, and having received the sacred body and blood of Christ, with his hands uplifted and then leaning on one of his disciples, he calmly died in prayer on the 21st of March in 543, right? So what do we get from this? The saints never feared to undertake any work from God, right? No matter how hard it was, because distrusting themselves, they relied for assistance and supported wholly upon prayer. Can you imagine if we just tried part of this, just practice just a part of this in our faith? I mean, we buy into so much other nonsense in our culture that rather falling in for the modern culture, let's fall in with Christ. Let's turn it over to Christ and the Holy Spirit to guide us. Let's offer it up. We're always taught that. Let's offer up our day to Christ. Remember what I said? Christ first, Christ second, Christ last. Okay? And let's also pray to Holy Saint Benedict to intercede for us, to give us the strength. And if we're parents, give us the strength to raise our kids to be little Holy Saint Benedicts, right? So if we fail, at least our children have a shot, right? All right, the next episode I'm actually going to get into Passion Sunday, which is the 5th Sunday of Lent. And I'm going to actually use the words from Father Leonard Goldfines, who did a beautiful job on today. And then maybe there's some inspiration there for you. So thanks again, and happy St. Benedict Feast Day. Yahoo!